Hey folks, welcome to the garage. Today we're talking about a real beauty, a car that truly changed the game. I'm talking about the Lincoln Zephyr. Now you hear that name, and you think of pure style. You think of that classic teardrop shape, that V12 engine purring under the hood. It was a car that looked like it was moving even when it was standing still. The Zephyr wasn't just another car from Ford, it was a statement. It was a bridge between the affordable Ford V8s and the ultra-luxurious, custom-built Lincoln K-Series cars. It was designed to fill a very specific gap in the market, and boy, did it do it with flair. It was the car for the successful professional who wanted something special. The idea for the Zephyr came from a pretty smart guy, Edsel Ford. He was Henry Ford's son, and he had a real eye for design. He saw what other companies like Cadillac and Packard were doing in the mid-price luxury market. Ford didn't really have anything to compete with them, so Edsel decided to create something new. He wanted a car that was modern, stylish, and powerful, but still more accessible than the big expensive Lincolns. He brought in some of the best designers of the day, including John Charta and a young Eugene T., or Bob, Gregory. Together, they took inspiration from the slick, aerodynamic designs that were becoming popular in Europe and started sketching out a true masterpiece of automotive art. The name Zephyr itself tells you a lot about the car. It comes from Zephyrus, the Greek god of the west wind. That name was perfect. It suggested something light, swift, and graceful, and the car lived up to it. The development was pretty quick for the time. They started with Charta's advanced rear-engine concepts, but eventually settled on a more conventional front-engine V12 layout to keep costs down and reliability up. The first Lincoln Zephyr was introduced for the 1936 model year. It was an instant sensation. People had never seen a mass-produced car that looked so futuristic. The public, and even the critics, just fell in love with it from the moment it rolled into the showrooms. The launch of the Zephyr was a huge moment for the Lincoln Motor Company. It was a massive success right out of the gate. In its very first year, the Zephyr accounted for over 80% of Lincoln's total sales. That's incredible. It single-handedly saved the Lincoln brand, which had been struggling during the tough years of the Great Depression. The car's popularity showed that people were ready for a new kind of automobile. They wanted something that wasn't just a box on wheels. They wanted style, performance, and a touch of luxury. The Zephyr delivered all of that and more, setting a new standard for what a mid-priced car could be and carving its own special place in automotive history. What made the Zephyr so special? Well, for starters, it was one of the first successful American cars to use a unibody construction. Now, we take that for granted today, but back then, most cars were built with the body bolted onto a separate, heavy frame. The Zephyr's bridge and truss design made it incredibly strong but also much lighter than its competitors. This lightweight design, combined with its aerodynamic shape, meant it was faster and more fuel efficient. It was a genuinely innovative piece of engineering. The press called it the first successfully streamlined car in America, and they weren't wrong. It was a glimpse into the future of car manufacturing that you could go out and buy right then. Then there was the engine. Oh, that glorious V12. It was a 267 cubic inch engine that was basically a modified version of the famous Ford Flathead 5.8. It wasn't the most powerful V12 ever made, starting at around 110 horsepower, but it was incredibly smooth. Driving a Zephyr was a totally different experience from driving other cars of the era. The engine just purred. There was very little vibration, and the car felt refined and sophisticated. It gave the driver a sense of prestige. You felt like you were piloting something truly special, not just driving a regular automobile. That V12 sound is something you never forget once you hear it in person. The design itself was a work of art. The lead designer, Bob Gregory, gave the car its signature look. It had a low roofline, a pointed prow front grille that cut through the wind, and fenders that were beautifully integrated into the body. The headlamps were faired into the fenders, which was a very modern touch for the 1930s. Everything about the car flowed. There were no sharp, awkward angles. From the split rear window to the teardrop-shaped tail, Every line was designed to be smooth and elegant. It looked more like a custom-built coach than a production car, and that's what made so many people fall in love with it. It was rolling sculpture. This combination of advanced engineering and stunning design had a huge impact on the entire auto industry. Other manufacturers had to sit up and take notice. The Zephyr proved that the public had an appetite for streamlined, modern-looking cars. Suddenly, the boxy, upright designs of the early 30s looked old and dated. Competitors scrambled to make their cars look sleeker and more aerodynamic. The Zephyr pushed the industry forward, forcing everyone else to get more creative with their designs. It wasn't just a successful car, it was a trendsetter. It raised the bar for everyone and showed what was possible when you combined bold design with smart engineering. You know, a lot of beautiful cars from that era were not always the most practical. But the Zephyr was different. Because of its unibody construction, it was actually quite spacious inside. The floor was lower than in body-on-frame cars, which meant more headroom for the passengers. It was also considered a very safe car for its time. That strong, rigid unibody structure offered better protection in an accident compared to older designs. So, you got this gorgeous, futuristic-looking car that was also comfortable and safe for the family. That was a winning combination. It was a car that appealed to both the heart and the head, which is a rare thing to find. One of the most famous stories about the Zephyr involves the creation of another legendary car, the Lincoln Continental. The story goes that in 1938, Edsel Ford returned from a trip to Europe and wanted a special, one-of-a-kind convertible for his winter vacation in Florida. He wanted something with a continental look. He tasked Bob Gregory with the job. Gregory and his team took a 1939 Lincoln Zephyr convertible, sectioned the body to lower it, moved the passenger compartment back, and famously mounted the spare tire on the back. When Edsel drove the car in Florida, it was such a hit with his wealthy friends that they placed hundreds of orders. That custom Zephyr became the prototype for the iconic Lincoln Continental. The Zephyr also made its mark in popular culture. It was the kind of car you'd see movie stars driving. It represented glamour and success. In the 1940 film The Grapes of Wrath, the Joad family's beat-up Hudson is constantly contrasted with the sleek modern cars they see on the road to California, many of which looked a lot like the Zephyr. It symbolized the promise of a better, more modern life that was just out of reach for so many during the Depression. The car was a status symbol, but an attainable one. It wasn't a Duesenberg. It was a car that a successful doctor, lawyer, or businessman could own and be proud of. Even the ownership experience was unique. When you bought a Lincoln Zephyr, you weren't just buying a car, you were buying into a premium brand. The dealership experience was a step up from buying a Ford. The salespeople were trained to treat customers with a higher level of service. This helped cement Lincoln's position as a luxury manufacturer. The Zephyr was the perfect vehicle to deliver this experience. It looked and felt expensive, and the service that came with it matched those expectations. It was a complete package that made owners feel like they had truly arrived, solidifying its place as a desirable and significant automobile of its time. So if the Zephyr was so great, what happened to it? Well, like with so many things from that era, the answer is World War II. Production of all civilian automobiles in the United States stopped in early 1942 so that the factories could be converted to produce war materials. The last pre-war Lincoln Zephyrs rolled off the assembly line, and for the next few years the focus was entirely on the war effort. This created a major break in the car's history and its design evolution. The momentum that the Zephyr had built up during the late 1930s and early 1940s was suddenly brought to a halt, and the automotive world would be a very different place after the war. When car production resumed in late 1945, the automotive landscape had changed. The pre-war tooling was brought back out, so the first post-war cars were basically warmed over 1942 models. Lincoln decided to simplify its lineup. The Zephyr name was officially dropped after the 1942 model year. The post-war cars were just called Lincolns. They were still based on the old Zephyr body and chassis, but they were bigger and heavier. The sleek, lightweight spirit of the original Zephyr was starting to fade. The designs became bulkier, with more chrome and less of that pure, streamlined look that had made the original so revolutionary. The magic was beginning to disappear. Public tastes were also changing. The post-war era brought a new sense of optimism and a desire for things that were big, bold, and flashy. The subtle, understated elegance of the pre-war Zephyr gave way to the chrome-laden tail-fin giants of the 1950s. Newer, more modern overhead valve V8 engines were also being developed, which made the old flathead V12 in the Lincoln seem a bit dated, even though it was still incredibly smooth. The competition, especially from Cadillac with its powerful new V8, was getting tougher. The Zephyr's design, once the pinnacle of modernity, was starting to look like a relic from a bygone era. The industry was moving on to the next big thing, but the legacy of the Lincoln Zephyr is undeniable. It's one of the most important American cars ever made. It saved the Lincoln brand, it pioneered unibody construction and streamlined design for the mass market, and it gave birth to the legendary Lincoln Continental. When you look at a '36 Zephyr today, it doesn't look like an old car. It looks like a timeless piece of design. It's a reminder of a time when elegance, innovation, and style came together perfectly. It proved that a car could be more than just transportation. It could be a piece of art. And that's a legacy that will never fade. It's a true classic, and we're lucky to still have them around.